In this, the first Berserker Khazan video, I'm going to be talking about my hands-on play session with the game at Gamescom just a couple weeks ago. This is a game that we've had our eye on for a while on Fextra Life. If you look at the gameplay, you can tell immediately this is very much a Souls-like game. Out of all the games I played at Gamescom, this is the one game that I would truly classify as a Souls-like. So if you're curious how it plays, watch on for some helpful information. So first of all, before we get too far into the gameplay, let me just say that this is not my gameplay footage. I was not able to capture this. It was provided to us by Nexon and Neopol. And the first thing you're going to notice about this gameplay that they gave us is that there is no HUD. Now, the game very much has a HUD. There was one when I was playing. I don't know why it's turned off for the gameplay that they gave us. But I will just say that the HUD is kind of familiar if you've played a Souls-like game. You have your health and stamina. You have your consumables. But on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you had, at this point of the game, or at some points of the game that I was playing, you actually had 8 skills that you could map and use them during combat. So I'll get into the skills in a minute because it's definitely something that I feel like sets the first Berserker Khazan apart from other Souls-like games. But when you look at the gameplay, you can tell immediately that this is going to be very familiar to you if you've ever played a Souls game. The combat is very much the same formula where you have a stamina bar, you're blocking, parrying, dodging, and attacking, and trying to either kill the enemy or break their stance in order to do a critical strike on them that deals severe damage. You know, regular enemies, it's going to kill them. On bosses, it's going to do substantial damage to them, but not kill them. So that formula is pretty much a staple of this game, and if you've played any game like that, then you know what you're getting into. The level design of the game reminds me of the Souls games a bit. It's got different ways to go. It's kind of linear with off-the-beaten-path exploration. It's got shortcuts and gameplay loops. There are these things in the game that will remind you of bonfires that are checkpoints for you, where you can work on your character and, you know, do all the things that you would think you would be able to do in a Souls game. They basically have that in there. There is a different lore and everything behind that all, but essentially mechanically they function in a very similar way. And one thing that I absolutely love about this game is it is bloody, it is dark, and the art style is absolutely phenomenal. As you play through the game, you kind of get more and more into it, I think. It has this kind of cel-shaded pseudo-anime art style to it that's absolutely fascinating, and I really love what they've done with it. It kind of, again, is something that sets it apart from other Souls-like games. You look at games like Lies of P or Neo, stuff like that. They're very flashy, they're very trying to look a little bit more spectacular in their graphics, but this game has more of that anime art style that I just absolutely love and isn't in enough games in my opinion. So we had very limited play time to play this game. When I was there, I had about 30 minutes, and I got to play the snowy area that you're kind of seeing here at the beginning, where he's like dripping blood everywhere and he's fighting basic enemies and comes across like some elite enemies, etc. I got to play that section, and that's where you really see the level design. The rest of the demo was basically 2 boss fights. And let me tell you something about the first Berserker Khazan compared to basically any other game I played at Gamescom. This game is hard. And I say that as somebody who's played over 2,500 hours of Elden Ring, who's played I don't know how many hundreds of hours in the Souls games, probably thousands when you combine between all those games. Bloodborne, Lies of P, any Souls-like game, The Surge, everything I can get my hands on. I can tell you already that this game is going to be near the top of those games when it comes to difficulty. It was extremely challenging. And again, this is coming from somebody who has got a lot of experience in those games. I was not able to beat a single boss in the time that I had. I got to play Phantom Blade Zero. I got to play Crimson Desert. I beat all the bosses except one boss in those demos in the time that I had. I couldn't beat a single one in my play session with this, and I looked around, and it looked like that was the case for pretty much anyone playing in the room. Now, there's something to consider about this that made the difficulty probably a little bit higher than it should have been, which is the skills, which is something I said I would talk about. You actually have a certain amount of skills you can equip. I'm assuming what happens through the progress of the game is that you'll unlock more and more of these skills, and you can slot them and use them. And I think there's a resource that you generate from attacking that allows you to use these things, or maybe they have a cooldown. Kind of reminded me of Code Vein a little bit. And these skills are insane. You know what I mean? Like, they have from dashing around the enemy and hitting him in the back, to like flipping in the air, to doing all kinds of crazy things in combat that's not just the typical Souls formula. And I feel like this is really what's going to set Khazan apart. And because I was kind of dropped in the deep end, you know, fighting these tough boss fights with very limited time to learn the skills, etc., I think that they probably would have been a little bit easier had I known what those skills did and was more familiar with them and could use them in my fights. a bit more effectively. And I'm not saying that the game's going to be easy when you master skills, but I do think it would be easier than, the time that I had playing. Still, though, I think that First Berserker Khazan is going to be a very challenging game for players. And if you watched the Phantom Blade Zero video that we did and you're thinking, wow, that sounds a little bit too easy, I'm looking for something that's a bit more of a challenge, or maybe you found Elden Ring too easy, maybe not the DLC, but the base game, then this is definitely a game you want to keep your eye on. And something else that's rather interesting that you won't see in this gameplay footage, but that was mentioned to me, is that gameplay in the first half of the game is slower paced, and it gets way faster in the second half of the game. Now, I wasn't able to really see this in my time, and I don't know exactly what they meant by that, but I'm assuming what happens is you gain more and more skills, and you're using those skills more and more, and they're lightning fast, and they allow for some very flashy, high-speed gameplay compared to what you're seeing here, which looks a little bit more slow, a little bit more methodical. So you're going to get kind of both that Souls-like gameplay and maybe something like Ninja Gaiden later on in the game. It's just really hard to show it here, and I don't have like a ton of examples for you. So you might be wondering like about stats and equipment, how that all works. The game does have stats similar to what you would find in like a Souls game that you can increase as you level up. And, you drop that currency when you die and you're going to go pick it up. It's very similar to that. You respawn, enemies respawn. That mechanic is very similar. The equipment, you have equipment slots. You'll find equipment from defeating enemies, looting treasure chests, exploring the game world. And these get more and more powerful. They have more powerful bonuses as time goes on. And the loot of the game is very much in the RPG space. When you compare this game to something like Phantom Blade Zero or even Crimson Desert, I don't think those games are going to have the itemization that the First Berserker Khazan has. So if you're somebody who likes that itemization and you would miss that in those games, definitely going to have that here in this game, so keep that in mind. All in all, I really enjoyed my time with the First Berserker Khazan. This was a game that when my demo ended, I felt like I didn't have enough time with the game. I felt like it hadn't really clicked for me yet, whereas when I played Phantom Blade Zero, it clicked very quickly within like 5 minutes. And Crimson Desert was starting to click with me by the end of its demo. This game just hadn't quite clicked with me by the time the demo ended. And there's just more stuff in this game to learn. I feel like the learning curve is a bit steeper. Obviously, I was dropped into the deep end in some fights, but I can't wait to dive into that. I love that this game has a lot of depth, that it's easy to learn, but hard to master, if you will. That's something I feel like this game's going to have compared to maybe some of those other games. And something else that I want to mention is that I think there's going to be a closed network test for this game later on this year. If I remember correctly, somebody told me that. I think I'm allowed to say that. I hope that I am. If I am not, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be a closed network test for this game later on this year. So keep your eyes out for that if you want to get your hands on the game. Check it out before you decide to buy it or not. Definitely think it would be good for a lot of players. And I think that this is definitely a game that if you're a Souls fan, you're going to want to check out. Speaking a little bit about negatives for the First Berserker Khazan, I'm really struggling to find negative things with this game so far. The performance seemed good. Combat was fun. The level design was good. The voice acting was good. The art style is good. I feel like, whether this game succeeds or not is going to come down to awareness, like how many people know this game exists, because I think that's growing since Gamescom, but I don't know how many people are aware of this game. And also how they handle character progression throughout the game and, how difficult this game actually is. Right now, I'm fairly confident that character progression is going to be solid and that, if you've ever played a Souls game, it's going to be about what you would expect, but I don't know how it'll carry it throughout the whole game and if it'll feel like there isn't enough loot to find around the map or not when you have like a whole game put together. So we'll have to see how that is. And obviously the difficulty, it was very tough. And, maybe that's a pro for a lot of people, but I definitely think, considering the amount of experience that I have, there's going to be players out there that love Souls games, that love Elden Ring, that this might be too difficult for. We'll just have to see how it is, when that closed network test comes out and as we learn more information about the game. Those could really be like the 2 points that maybe are an issue, but as it stands right now, I really don't have any issues with this game, and I'm totally excited to see more. So right now, this game doesn't have a release date. We don't know exactly when it's coming out, but it's supposed to release early next year. That's what I've been told, so hopefully that means Q1, but it could be Q2 or beginning of Q2. It's coming out on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation 5, so it's going to be out on all platforms. So that's another really great thing about this game. You don't have to, miss out on it if you don't have one of those. But I'm curious to hear from you guys what you make of the First Berserker Khazan so far. This is a game you'll probably see more and more on our channel as time goes on. We're going to be at Tokyo Game Show in a couple weeks. I'm hoping this is there as well and I can play it there. But what do you make of it so far? I'm sorry the HUD isn't there. Wish I could show that to you guys more. Is this a game you're going to keep your eye on, or have you had too many Souls likes? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below.